Hi guys, I want to thank you again for popping in this week. I'd like to introduce a guest of ours this week, Stephanie Woolard, who is a fantastic Order of Australia medalist who's come through from Nepal and helped us set up on our LinkedIn. We've actually got a great overview of who she is and what she does. And I'd like to hand over to you, Steph.
Woo!
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on your show, guys. Well, my topic for this week, and it's great to be here on Corporate Underground, is speaking your truth, which I find a really interesting topic, especially during these times with all that's happening and all the different, understandings and misunderstandings of what is actually happening in our world at the moment. So, we've seen lots of people springing up and speaking their truths, and so many different versions of reality and so many different truths. So today's question is around, if you're a person that loves unity and, kind of bringing people together and finding commonality as we all have that kind of human goodness and love and unity, then, how do you speak your truth? And do you speak your truth, even if you know it's going to create division? Even if you know that it's not going to, if others aren't going to agree with you, others that are dear and near to you. So I'll throw that out there to you guys.
I've always had something, sorry, Finn, I've always had something that I try to live by, and I say try because sometimes I say I do live by and I'm constantly lying then. And it's a saying, I forget where I picked it up. I think it was during some trainings, but it's called steer into conflict. If you... Yeah, it's not about being an argumentative jerk. It's just that if you go into something that you say you feel like, if I don't bring this up now, it'll be an issue later, so I'm going to bring it up now. And chances are it won't be an issue if you bring it up earlier. So I like the idea of steering in the conflict. It's something that I try and am trying more and more to do, because it genuinely does help. When someone says, do I look good in this? You're better off being honest and, bumbling over your words for 20 minutes, because then the truth eventually does come out.
And just as an example, what if your truth is something that is so polarizing to other people? Pick, for example, I support Trump, or I'm against vaccines. They are two very polarizing opinions and feelings to have in our world today. So what's an example of steering into truth? If you're in a situation and everyone's bagging Trump or saying, they can't wait to line up for the vaccine, how would you approach that subject?
Well, I can only speak for myself, but this is my corporate look. I am my own truth. This is me. So whether I'm coaching in a boardroom, whether I'm building a new startup, whether I'm speaking, whether I'm playing music, I think to speak your truth, you've first off got to understand what that truth is. And for me, it's not just a topic whether Trump gets in. That's not a truth. To me, just a topic. So for me, my truth is about using creativity, imagination, fun music to be the best version of myself, which I can then influence other people to find out to be the best version of themselves. So that's just my truth. So, and I look like this. People say, oh, you can't go and do this. And I go, you're right, you can't do that. And they go, no, I said you can't do that. And I go, yeah, that's right, you can't do that. And they all get confused. But I don't have any issue with it, because I'm comfortable in what I'm trying to portray. And it's not an ego thing. It's just that, I can try and be what they want or try and suit the conversation. I love listening to their point of view. And it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just that, and I like to listen to that because I look for evidence beyond what I'm looking for. And sometimes I'll find artifacts in what they're saying, which I find interesting to put into my matrix. But there's an inherent brand of who I am, and I am the purveyor of different. I love different. I've sat in different my whole life. So for me, it's easy. I understand why it might be hard for others, but
actually speaking your truth is about listening to your truth. It's about knowing what your truth is. Sometimes we may not have something that emerges. Sometimes that space in between others hasn't really been defined. There's something about that sort of respecting the middle space, understanding what that middle space is, even if it is online. Where does that liminal space also hold truth? And that by being in that space, we're part of that truth and may not have recognized it. So there's something about that middle space that is emerging for me, what does that middle space show its identity as? And how can we, as we listen to that, as well as ourselves, recognize not only the inner truth for ourselves, but also the outer truth that we're also part of?
One of the things I find, it's a question, I put this out to a few people. Would you rather somebody tell you the truth that you disagree with loudly, or would you rather somebody tell you the truth they disagree with quietly? And you find that a lot with people that are racist. They'll turn around and they'll say, oh, that guy is saying he's racist. I'd rather know that than somebody quietly talking behind, I don't know that he's that way. I'd rather know that you are anti-vaxxer or that you are a vaxxer. If you've got these sort of points and things, I want to know these things. If that is what you're feeling, that is what you're about. For me, it's the hiding of the truth that causes the problem. Now, if somebody's brave enough to say, I vote for Trump, which is just a politician, and I've had so many arguments with people over that, or you don't believe in vaccine and you do, so many people get absolutely wild about that. At the end of the day, I'd rather know your truth, right? So then I can deal with it with my truth and how I'm going to deal with that. This whole point where you've got to hide yourself away ultimately doesn't change anybody's mind. It doesn't allow you to. Most people will scream at somebody and scream at another person, and you'll get no closer. By allowing people to speak their truth comfortably, you can actually deal with that comfortably and actually have a discourse with that. You may not sway them in that conversation, but you'll give them things to take away and think about. And that's the point of a discussion. For me, that is about the truth.
I couldn't disagree with you more.
I know you would.
Okay, so this is what we do. You and I, we disagree. So first of all, on the broader first question, Stephanie, that you posed, a little bit like Finn, speaking the truth is in my DNA. I have a tattoo that says "Truth to Power" on my arm. I've sat in front of prime ministers and presidents and told them that they were the problem. I have no issue saying what needs to be said if I believe that it needs to be said, and it's in the greater good. To Maddie's point about he would rather have it said than not. I'm not sure that I agree with that. I think people have a right to share whatever they want and not share whatever they want. But I do agree that there's a problem if people are misrepresenting their truth. That is a genuine problem, and that if you don't really know the basis by which people are coming at arguments and you don't understand what their interest is in that argument, that's a massive issue. But if you are prepared to stand and fight, and I kind of live and die on Twitter all day, every day, and that's what I do. I speak the truth on Twitter. Some people try and shoot me down and fight me all afternoon and debate and argue, and I'm more than happy to do that. And others say, hey, that your truth seems to be aligned a little bit to my truth, and so let's speak some truth together, and that works as well. But I think we as human beings have a right to privacy, and we have a right to hold some of our own beliefs to ourselves. But if you're going to share, then I think it's really important that you share accurately. And you
I think that's really difficult. There is this default that if you've got an issue, you will speak. And yet, in so many examples, we've seen that that's not true. For example, when it comes to silencing a group of people from the voice that they've got, the sound that they've got, silencing a truth that for them is important, but for us may not be. Therefore, switch that kind of like radio off, or don't go and ask them, or don't invite them to the conversation, which is even worse, or, silo them out. So it's a really fascinating conversation about what it means to speak up. And I feel, Adam, I love that you have the empowerment and that you have inside you the energy to come forth and speak. And I wonder how so many other people around the world who don't have that, either by way of their birthright or lack of birthright, or privilege or lack of privilege, could also feel the same way.
I'd love to add there that I'm someone who I feel like I do speak my truth, but I would like to speak my truth a lot more, to be honest. I have some very different views, and I've kind of grown up hearing my mum in discussions with extended family or other people. Just, I really admire my mum because she voices her opinion and her truth, but I've seen, sometimes it doesn't work in certain situations. So I'm someone that probably, uses my discernment as to when I'll speak my truth, because I kind of have thought that there's no point talking to a brick wall, or if someone's not, if you kind of get that sense, they're kind of not even open to listening, then why would you bother? So I'm really keen to hear your, opinions on that.
Well, I think it's really fascinating how people think that a conversation or an argument has two sides to it. And I often think it has many more sides than two sides. So people say, do you go for Trump or Biden? My answer is, you win.
Polycentric argument.
Because I don't even care. I don't care about any of that. It's not relevant to me. And so when they go, what do you mean you win? And I go, I get the game you're playing and you win, because I don't care. And so people are so bought up into two sides of a conversation. And I love being the third side of the conversation. It's a little bit of fun to me to actually just to throw that I call it cognitive dislocation, to throw that spanner in the works, because these people are just going on about this stuff that means absolutely nothing. It's just this verbiage, sonic pollution coming out of their mouth of this amplified emotion. And I just go, yeah, you win. I don't care. It's just like, but and then you just watch these people fall apart, because I actually don't.
It's sonic pollution.
But
it's true though, right?
But part of that is your selective areas of interest. So
exactly.
You don't care about Trump and Biden, but tons of people do care about Trump and Biden.
100%.
And so that's about us self-selecting in and out of whatever the conversation is.
But it's about being able to pick that third side.
Yeah. Well, to me, I think the bigger issue is, and Tia, I completely take your point about the privilege that comes from being a white heterosexual male in one of the richest countries in the world.
Are you heterosexual?
Being able to say what you want to say. But at the same time, I think the bigger issue is it's one thing to speak your truth, but if you speak a truth and you don't live that truth, that's where the problem begins. So when you're saying one thing, but you're behaving in a way that is inconsistent, then the speaking of the truth actually is fraught. And so
that's the thing about speaking it. You might not be acting it, right? And the thing about sort of like really focusing on the spoken word is that who's there to check?
I like to add to that too. Sorry, Adam, but like the problem is that some people that speak a truth, they do it crusade-like, and they believe that those, and we touched on this a little bit, they believe that those that don't join the crusade, you're either with us or against us. And you see a lot of that in movements, okay, for those groups that don't have a voice, and they say everyone that's not speaking up, you're doing more damage. Now the problem is that's not fair, because you are on the same team, but someone doesn't feel like having their house burnt down, someone doesn't feel like having their business shut down, and someone doesn't feel like losing their house and mortgage and all sorts of things like that. So I don't think it's fair to assume that just.
But why even be part of the conversation? Like, why even take a side?
Well, because
that's the way that you see world, right? Like the world is the way that you see it, and your sight is the truth and the only truth. It's the moment where we feel subjective is the only truth, rather than the subjective is one of.
Yeah, but if you look at the cause and effect of a conversation and you're looking at an argument and you can detect that it's an argument before you even go into that argument, right? You know what you're walking into. You know the two sides of the conversation. You know what you're trying to get out of it. I've been with my partner 30 years. We've had like one fight in 30 years because I don't believe in arguing. Because I just go, you win. It's like, and I know people might get upset, but it's thinking about what is going on in this scenario that's about to happen. What's the energy exchange? What is the actual success criteria look like? I think like this. Maybe I'm weird, but I'm looking at it from a viewpoint of what is going on here. Why would I go into a conversation and join on one side and be part of this tribalistic thing, even if I do believe that, because I'm just ganging up on some other thing and then there's house burning going on.
Finn, let me tell you why. Finn, let me tell you why. Because there has been no social justice evolution in the last 100 years that has not required a fight. It does not happen without a fight. At some point, for change to happen, to make it fairer for more people, somebody has to stand up. Somebody has to have the argument that's uncomfortable, and somebody has to have their house risk being burned down. Because if nobody's prepared to do that, nothing ever changes.
That's the hard bit.
But if you stand back and don't buy any products and don't do things, you do the Gandhi method, where it's not about being the aggressive. There are ways to strategically look at a situation and not go onto the offensive by being defensive, by
but
not
then
buying
he
into
was
the
trained in
conversation.
legals, and he was there to sort of like present.
But that's that strategic thought process around.
He could, but he knew what he was doing. I mean, he had experienced racism. He knew that the only way to battle the larger, sort of the longer game with the British was to play that long game, because he knew what that long game was. It wasn't about these short-term wins. And he knew, because he tried that already in court, and he realized that debate wasn't going to get him very far, because
does
the judicial system wasn't with him.
Like, are we winning anything here? Like, what's real? Like, all these arguments going on, and all this fragmented society. Is it working?
And that's the distraction that's happening. It's like it's been happening since colonial times and even before. If you could split 2 teams or 3 teams into 4 and actually let the Tutsis and the Hutus fight each out, or if you go and you take on, you make different groups come on. And again, with Gandhi, I mean, he turned around and they tried to battle him. And a lot of people in his own side wanted that to happen. But I mean, like, one of the things I'm a little bit interested in, just to hear from Tia and AJ, is I know with academia at the moment, it's on its knees, and there's a whole bunch of people that are speaking the truth, but then those people are getting cancelled out because there's a cancel culture coming along, that people are actually losing their posts, and they're losing their posts and jobs, but particularly in academia, where people will go and bring up a topic and then will disagree, and then all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of pile-on that actually happens to that. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
And the YouTube, there's so many accounts getting taken down at the moment with different views on the pandemic. So many YouTube channels with thousands and thousands of followers. I mean, that's just that makes you suspicious that where is the truth, and why are they being taken down?
It gets put underground then, and that's again the thing. If you've got people that are talking about it, you can actually confront and discuss that with them. If they go underground, they'll go somewhere else and it'll come up. They don't change their beliefs because their belief system has been forced back in with the group that they've had. And that is a fear of mine, that we're going to end up with so many splinterings that you don't actually, and it will continue, that will actually overturn the things that are happening. In a bad way.
I think the danger is when something becomes a belief.
Yeah.
When something becomes a belief, it's not something that can be questioned. It's this is the way, and I believe it so strongly, despite there potentially even being some untruths to what I'm believing in. But I strongly believe that this is the case. Replicability of X experiment or hypothesis. This is the only way, is I think where we start to become quite militant and start militarizing not only our language, but then our actions. We militarize the way that we behave with each other. We use certain tools, even in the economic sense, to use that kind of force on other countries, because we believe that this is the way that it should be, despite the fact that our truth may be different. I remember when I was doing some research on militarization of our, and how we use the military to silence others, to point our guns to somebody, a country, for example, stop trading with them because we don't believe that what they're doing is appropriate. We, force our ways into their countries, tell them that they've got weapons of mass destruction, which we've yet to find.
Oh, I mean, all of that is a truth, but it had to be matched by another truth. I mean, there's all this propaganda, and propaganda is somebody else's truth. I mean, at the end of the day, it was dropped over line and leaflet, or was done through noise. But Tony, I mean, what do you think around marketing and this counterculture, this ability to take things, the truth out, or the belief of the truth?
Yeah, well, I mean, any form of putting anything into other people's minds is marketing, and saying anything in a public place is marketing. So I guess this is the problem when it comes to truth. If a certain topic is widely known, that anyone that disagrees with that is a fool or an extremist or whatever you want to say, whatever title you want to give that, then that in itself is slowing down the process of someone actually being able to decide what their truth is. They're being marketed to. They're being told that if you do not believe that this is the right way, then you're wrong. And that goes against everything we discussed last week's episode about how do you know what's true. It's about looking at multiple angles and perspectives and analyzing both sides of the story. Well, if you can't do that because that side of the story is, removed from the internet, or even having that conversation makes you a hippie because, why would you even think about that? Like, you're so stupid for thinking that that's wrong. It saved millions of lives. Why would you think other than? Then I think it's just trash. And this is the problem. I will not talk about things, definitely in a situation like this in front of a camera, because I'm not a crusader. I believe that there are things that if you say it, you are viewed as a moron. And I have seen people that went on that crusade lose their house and get so many things happen to them just because they were dumb enough to think that justice existed in every situation. And I'm sorry, but that's unfortunately.
I got to say though that something Adam said last week about truth, which really resonates with me, is there are multiple levels of truth. There's the truth that's driven from your innate, what you really believe. There's a truth driven from a commercial reality. And so if there's a topology on what the truth is, which is more valuable, like I am trying to achieve something. So my truth is to get people to believe in this thing because it's going to generate me a lot of money, right? That's the truth too. And so, but it gets all clouded in this thing that, is it right or is it wrong? Well, it's being able to try and detect where that is coming from, that truth is coming from, and which layer that sits in. Do you remember saying that?
I think truth has a shelf life.
Yeah, I think that's right, Finn. And I think just there's another piece. So, Tone, I don't necessarily agree with what you just said. I agree that you have a right to withdraw from the conversation because you don't want your house burnt down. Obviously, that's everybody's right. But I don't necessarily think that I don't think freedom of speech is unlimited, and I don't think freedom of truth is unlimited. And so, for example, people who get deplatformed from Facebook or Twitter because they are having, racist rants, I think that is a limit that we as a society should say that is unacceptable. That is not free speech anymore. When you are deliberately there to harm others, you have gone beyond what are the limits of free speech. That doesn't mean you're not entitled to believe them. Nobody can police what you believe, but to actually go out and try and push people to hate others for no reason is a problem. And I think part of the ongoing conversation, and it is a really Trumpian conversation, is this, I support Trump and therefore I'm good or I'm bad depending upon your worldview. But part of the reason that people who look at people who support Trump and go, you're a moron, you should be deplatformed, is because his views are so racist and so divisive and assault so many people who don't have a voice for themselves. And there's a point where you have to go, this is no longer free speech. This is actually oppression. What we're trying to do is oppress people who don't have a voice and who don't have a way of protecting themselves. And somebody incredibly powerful with a massive platform is able to, again, squash down on people who will never be able to fight back. And that's where we have to say as a society, that is unacceptable behavior.
Well, I think it goes into corporations. You've got, people talking about whether COVID's real or not, whether climate change is real or not. You've got AI algorithms spewing out information to target certain groups who believe in a certain thing to buy a product or to believe in a certain thing that has a commercial outcome. And so, then you start saying,
that's like propaganda, public relations.
Exactly.
Like the Edward Bernays, get you smoking so that we can earn a little bit extra money.
But now it's so hyper targeted with these AI algorithms that, you start to believe in your own little world. And these things are now twisting you to buy or to believe in an idea, an ideation or a mindset that will help them take over a country or buy a certain product. It's sort
Finn, did you guys see yesterday, I saw on social media that there was a conspiracy theorist on Facebook and Twitter who was saying for months and months and months that COVID was a scam and a hoax and it wasn't real and it was all fake. 33-year-old fitness trainer died of COVID.
Right.
I mean, this is, misinformation kills. This is part of the issue.
Yeah.
Expression of truth. And I think, there's famous artists and musicians and things that all describe, and, when you're in your element, just being a channel for truth as creative expression. And I think, that's a really interesting thing to consider as well in terms of when we speak of truth and tapping into that kind of source, into that life force within and being that truth whether that's speaking it or, creating things, that is, I believe what's going to change the world, because it's actually, fulfilling our function here as humans. So I'd love to just kind of wrap up and go around and hear a sentence from all of you to kind of summarize this discussion.
Creative expression, I love it. It's my life. Creativity lives much more than just music and art. It's also in the way you connect with people, the way you see problems, the way you join disparate connections and dots, whether that's relationships, people, art, music, whatever. You can be creative in any part of your life. So tap into creativity. I love it. It's right on my wavelength.
I think many a time we get into the corner, like we sort of like, oh my God, what is the truth? And we get into a bit of a corner. Expand that situation, expand the corner, expand your truth.
Speak your truth. Be willing to actually say who you are and what you are, and you will find the people that will back you and be there with you, but also be open-minded enough to accept other people's truth and discuss that with them.
Don't just speak your truth, live your truth.
Say that some of the best connections I've ever made is by being real and speaking things that I felt like not everyone would agree with. So unless it's life-threatening, or I would say always speak what's real.
And you haven't had your house burnt down, have you?
Not yet. Give it a week.
Good.
I'm right outside the window.
Guys, thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you.
Steph.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you, Steph.